everyone, welcome to this episode of Tuesdays with Monday. My name is Haley and I'm joined by my colleague Lauren Jacobson, Solution Consultant at Plum Consulting. Today is going to be a little bit different. Instead of walking through features of Monday.com, we're going to show you something more valuable. We're going to show you and walk you through the Purple Plum approach to implementation. So if you've ever struggled to explain what's not working in your business or felt like your software and tools don't quite match your real processes, this episode is for you. So here's today's agenda. First, Lauren will discuss our approach to implementation. Then we'll start with common challenges we see and what usually brings real estate teams to Purple Plum. From there, we'll walk through the discovery process, the types of questions we ask, and what to expect when working with us. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with a Q&A. So let's get started kicking off your engagement with Purple Plum. First, you'll be introduced to a solution consultant. So I'll pass it over to Lauren, who will take it away from here.
Hey Haley, thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to walking through our processes and what people can expect when working with our team. So when we work on an implementation, we typically deliver in a series of phases. As you can see here, we have 5 kind of lined out on the screen. We also typically implement a project plan in the user's account so that they can follow along through these process steps and see where we are as we continue working together. So starting off, you'll see our project kickoff. We want to ensure we establish a project team and timeline and identify any future and upcoming meeting cadences. We might also ask you to provide some initial files or high-level understanding of where we want to go next. And then discovery and requirements, we'll typically start that a few weeks into the project, and we'll jump into a little bit later what conducting a discovery workshop might include and how we summarize recommendations. Our iterative workflow building sessions will kind of span across the forthcoming weeks, where we start initial concepts in Monday.com, and then we iterate on those concepts through your input and validation. And then last but not least, we always want to test everything before we reach our rollout point. So we'll spend at least a few weeks looking at different testing scenarios and ensuring that we've met all of the criteria and requirements that we've identified. And then once we're ready to go, we plan a rollout for our end users and include things like documentation, or training materials as needed. So it typically takes about 12 weeks for us to complete an implementation. And this just kind of gives you an idea of what you can expect during that time. So our kickoff is really about understanding critical project elements, things like scope, things like timeline and roles. So we'll start with introductions, so we get to know the people we'll be working with and how they might overlap and intersect within that project. But our goal is really just to ensure that the customer leaves with a clear high-level alignment with zero ambiguity, that we understand why the project matters to the customer's business. So, clear business goals, definition of success, project timeline, who the Monday champion might be, or who the workflow owners might be as we proceed with the project. So once we've completed our kickoff call, we always want to align on how we'll approach discovery. So discovery is one of the most critical aspects of implementation because it's really that blueprint before the build. As a solution consultant, I want a deep understanding of your reality, the business context, the goals, the current state and process, what tools you might currently be using. And all of this information should be really well understood before we ever translate it into Monday.com. So starting with current process and challenges, Haley, would you want to explain what we see here at Purple Plum?
Yeah, so common challenges we see at Purple Plum is a lack of a single source of truth. So maybe you're a real estate team tracking touch points with buyers and sellers, nurturing residential leads, and information is everywhere, just not in one place. You know something isn't working, reporting feels manual, everything feels reactive, and things just start falling through the cracks. So this is why discovery is very important.
Thanks, Haley. Yeah, those are really common challenges that we see and hear from clients. And so now the next step in our process is really capturing those, conversation points. And what we might do in this situation is use a few resources such as a discovery questionnaire, where we can really talk through the process steps that your team currently uses. What they might like about their current process, what they might want to see changed in a new implementation. Um, the goal is to ensure that we both have clarity on what problems are being solved and enables us to move from what you say you want to actually what you need. So once we have a clear documentation, we'll often translate that into a requirements doc. So based on the example that you said, we might need the ability to see turnaround time from lead to opportunity, or we might need the ability to assign tasks and change team members throughout the process. Or also associate different leads to a property as you're working through the system. And so in addition to Monday type documents, we also will translate work into an architectural diagram. So we'll take what we've heard from you and, put it into a structure that looks like a monday.com workflow. So now you can see here where we have leads at the top and they might move into a buyer or a seller opportunity. We're able to link these things together into accounts and contacts directories so that we're capturing that client information all across that process. And then also connected out, you might see some like dashboards or reporting areas that we want to ensure encapsulate all of the boards connected to them. So what is a workflow? A workflow can be described as any piece of work that really passes from initiation to completion. So in Monday terms, it could be a combination of several things. It could be not just a single board. It might be 3 different boards that support various points in that process. It can also include things like dashboards or apps if you wanted to include them as well. So a few workflow examples that we see are request process output. So things like you have a property acquisition and it needs to go through underwriting into a closed deal stage. We might have project plans. So it might be renovations to properties before you're ready to sell them. And we want to track all of those in a common way every time that occurrence happens. We might also have master data. So it might be a list of all of your clients. It might be a vendor directory or a lender directory of sorts. And then dashboards are really a way for us to dynamically report across multiple boards or within a single board as well with visual representation. So what does this look like now that we've, moved into Monday? It's going to look a little bit different than our architectural diagram. So I think if we zoom in on that left-hand navigation, you can see that the workflow diagram aligns to how these boards are built in our left-hand navigation. So dashboarding and reporting through leads and opportunities and some of our accounts and sales activities directories.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. That was such a great walkthrough. So let's continue this. I'll act as our real estate client, and Lauren is going to act as herself, a wonderful purple plum consultant. So now we've gone through the discovery process, and as the client, I have a few follow-up questions. So let's get into the questions. Okay, so as the client, I'm curious. How do you handle migrating legacy or active data into monday.com without disrupting day-to-day operations?
Yeah, this is a really great question. So often we'll talk a little bit about migration during the discovery phase so we understand, who might be impacted and when. We might ultimately decide that there's a clear cutover for things to transition to Monday. So if your current system or process in place has active, information happening, we might say, let that finish throughout that process before we move new process into Monday. And ultimately, if we do need to transition like active work into the platform, we plan for that in a way so it isn't disruptive. It might be a clear cutover and communications out to your team, or it might be something that we schedule on a certain day or at a certain period of time so that it's not disruptive to anything ongoing.
Awesome. Thank you for covering that. Okay, so for my next question, how do you ensure customers feel supported throughout the entire implementation process?
Great question. We typically build through iterative working sessions. So often this looks like me as a consultant going offline and putting together an initial concept. And then working with the client through that. So we might talk through what I've built, and it gives them an opportunity to identify maybe gaps in information that was provided, or maybe I didn't understand something quite the way they intended. So we're always kind of building and refining based on that feedback and through a series of sessions so that you're involved with that process, you're informing that process, and have opportunity to even walk away and maybe involve other team members or get feedback from other end users, if you will, before we implement that solution.
Awesome, thank you. That's good to know. Okay, so for the next question, what if our team has struggled with adopting new tools in the past? What do you recommend?
Well, I'd want to understand where there were challenges. Is it that the user interface might have been too complicated? Is it that maybe there are technical restrictions? So, really understanding why that occurrence has happened in the past. We feel confident that there's always ways to make work approachable and create a user experience that makes it easy for people to adopt platforms like Monday.com.
Thank you, Lauren. So, how does this process differ for each real estate agent or brokerage?
Well, the process really should stay the same. We always want to start with a kickoff, go through discovery, have iterative building, and then test and then roll out. What might differ is that each client might be in a different phase of their business or be using different process steps, right? So, for example, one client might be primarily working out of their email or off of notepads or keeping information in their head, whereas another might be using different platforms or technologies currently. So, the focus is more on translating that work into to Monday from a different process. So, it's really, where clients are, we want to meet them where they are and help them translate their work to Monday as easily as we can.
Thank you. That really gives me clarity and that makes a lot of sense. So, I appreciate you going over those questions for me. But okay, so that brings us to the end of today's Tuesdays with Monday session. Thank you so much for Lauren for joining us and sharing your expertise with us. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. If you'd like to rewatch the session or explore other webinars that we have in our series, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel or visit our website, purpleplumtech.com/events. We'll be back soon with a new episode of Tuesdays with Monday, and we can't wait to see you there. So if you're ready to turn your business needs into clear workflows on Monday.com, reach out to Mark on the screen here or book a discovery call with him at purpleplumtech.com/contact. Thanks again for joining us today and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.